Good afternoon, everyone. I want to welcome you to our webinar today on supporting higher education students in an online learning environment. I hope the transition to online learning has been hopefully a little bit more manageable as time has gone on. And I know myself and the rest of the team today hopes that you leave today with some more tips and information to bring to your students as you continue to teach online. Kathleen, can you move me to the next slide quick? A couple of housekeeping items before we get going. All participants' microphones are on mute. Feel free to put questions in the chat box under the questions area. On the next slide, I'll actually show you where that is. And then a recording of the webinar is going to be sent out. We are going to caption it, so know that the captioned copy of it will be sent out probably on Monday of next week. So watch for that in your inbox. So on the screen here is a copy of our GoToWebinar panel. As you can see, there's a button at the top that allows you to kind of minimize it or expand out the panel. As I said, everyone is in mute for the duration of the call. So if you're needing to ask a question, feel free to put it in the area that says questions. One of my colleagues is going to be monitoring this throughout the time together today, and the questions will be posed to us at the end. So before we get going, I'm going to have all of the text helpers on the call today and the webinar introduce themselves. First and foremost, my name is Rachel Cruzel. I'm a Territory Sales Director. I spent the last 10 years working in higher education with students with disabilities, so I know kind of the ins and the outs of the field quite well and have continued to stay quite connected to higher ed through all of this move from in-person to online learning over the last few weeks and months. Kathleen, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yep. Hi, I'm Kathleen Colburn. I am our product manager for Read and Write, which is Texthelp's literacy support tool that I'll be showing you today on the webinar. So my role is, I work with our software developers to make sure that the product is doing everything that you all, our users, need it to be doing. So I usually, enjoy doing these webinars and getting to show things and hear your feedback and your questions.
All right, thanks Kathleen, thanks Rachel. My name's Louis Shanafelt and I am the EquatIO product manager / evangelist. I've been at Texthelp now shortly over 8 months now. Prior to joining Texthelp, I worked at the public sector down in Central Florida for 20 years. Working for the 8th largest school district in the nation. So delivered lots of PD, worked in instructional design, and also a former secondary math teacher, and also taught elementary school. So I have lots of great things to share with you on how you guys in higher education can bring math and STEM content to the digital platform, if you will, and be able to share some great things with your students during this remote learning transition that we're all experiencing. So thrilled to be on the call with everybody today.
Awesome. So let's quick run down what we're going to talk about today. First and foremost, we're going to spend just a minute or two talking about access to devices and online learning. From there, we're going to talk about literacy supporting courses, then math STEM supporting courses, and then as I said, we've left some time at the end for questions. So don't be shy, feel free to put your questions in that questions chat box and we'll have time to answer them at the end. So with this move to online learning, one thing that I've heard a resounding kind of conversation about at the K-12 level, at the higher ed level, is a student's access to technology, and what it is has varied across the board. Kathleen, you want to flip to the next slide for me? So right now, students are having access to a variety of different types of devices. Some of them are devices that they've had access to kind of from the beginning when they've been on campus. Others are devices that might be new to them. They might have had to buy something last minute in order to get access remotely from home, or it might be something that they have been gifted or are loaned from the school. Things like Windows, MacBooks, Chromebooks are common things in higher education, and students aren't able to rely on the technology they're used to using. In addition, I'm hearing faculty and campuses having various different places and platforms and locations that courses are being taught. There tends to be some level of continuity across an institution, but I've also seen some institutions where, the biology faculty are using this platform and the math faculty are using this platform. So some things to be mindful of are, is your school primarily a Google school or a Microsoft school? Are students submitting and doing assignments on one or two of these realms? And in higher ed, you're kind of one or two camps. In addition to that, looking at what LMS platform your learning management system is that you're primarily using. In higher ed, Canvas, Blackboard, Moodle, D2L, Brightspace. There's a handful of other smaller ones out there that higher ed is using. And so just kind of having an understanding of what tools are available to support students in online learning environments based on what your school is kind of using is critical and key to be able to provide strong support for your students. And while our products don't always really tie in with video conferencing, doing asynchronous or synchronous media for classes right now, but that's something to be aware of just in general. Are students getting access to video content online at all to supplement reading, to supplement writing, to supplement assignments? So that being said, I'm going to toss this over to Kathleen, and she's going to start taking us through literacy support within courses.
Great, thank you, Rachel. So I'm going to talk a little bit today about different ways that the Read and Write product can support your students in this time of remote and primarily online learning. So for those of you who are familiar or not familiar, just a little bit of background to set the stage. Maybe some of you have been using Read and Write on your campuses pretty extensively. Even those users who might consider themselves power users in kind of normal circumstances, in this time of remote learning, it might pose some new challenges that didn't exist before. So Read and Write, the good thing about Read and Write is a license of it includes access to multiple different versions and different platforms. So tying in with what Rachel discussed of students using all different kinds of devices, whether they're used to them or not, whether it's the Windows operating system, Mac, Chromebooks, the important thing here is that if you're using Read and Write, if your students are using Read and Write, there is a version that will be able to support them, regardless of which of those kind of primary platforms they might be using. And especially, that just continues to be important even now more so than ever, making sure that they have access to those tools, because even those students who may not necessarily struggle quite as much in, normal circumstances in school, remote learning and distance learning can, maybe pose some new challenges for them where they could use the supports of a tool like Read and Write to keep them independent and productive in these times. So there are a few things, ways that Read and Write can help that I want to talk you through today. So first I want to show you a little bit of Read and Write working inside an LMS. So lots of different LMSs being used. The functionality and the way things look and feel can certainly be different depending on what platform you're using. I'm going to focus primarily on Canvas today just to show you a few things, but know that a lot of the experience here can be applied to whatever LMS you're using in your school. I also want to talk a little bit about our Texthelp PDF reader. So PDFs are, have always been and continue to be now a really popular file format for textbooks and articles and assignments that students are completing. So I want to talk a little bit through how the PDF reader can continue to support them with their independence using PDFs and their ability to do assignments and share with their other teachers as well as other students. And then I'll touch briefly on our EPUB reader as well. For those of you who may have students using EPUBs, perhaps from Bookshare or other EPUB services like that, I'll show you a little bit of how Read and Write can support there. And finally, we'll talk briefly as well about virtual scanning and how to make sure that the resources that you may be providing to students are accessible and readable so that they'll be able to use these support tools. And I'll also mention here, I touched on how Read and Write works across a lot of different platforms. Today specifically, I'm going to be focusing on Read and Write for Google, which is our Chrome extension. Seeing as the webinar title is Online Learning Environment, I thought it would be fitting to show our online or browser-based version of Read and Write. But just keep in mind that, even though this is a Chrome extension, it works with both the G Suite or Google environment, and it also works with Office 365. So lots of different ways that this tool can be used in addition to what I might show here. So first on to using Read and Write inside of your LMS. So we actually recently did an update to the Read and Write extension to make it work across even more LMSs and online environments, that being the word prediction feature and talk and type. So if you have students that would benefit from word prediction for writing support and spelling support, or students who maybe just want the convenience and the ease of dictation rather than having to type, these tools are now going to be even more widely available to them inside their LMSs, as well as places like Gmail, Outlook Online. So if I pop out of my slides here now, let's take a look at a few things. So I'm inside of Canvas. Here at Texthelp, we have some demo accounts set up for Canvas so we can, kind of replicate the same sorts of experiences that our customers are having. So I want to show you a few ways where that Read and Write can be used inside of the LMS. So if I go into my little demo course here. So if I'm a student and I need the literacy support with reading content inside the LMS and understanding it and interacting with it, I can open up my Read and Write toolbar to do that really easily. So let's say I need to participate in a discussion thread with my class. This is going to look kind of bare bones because it's just me throwing some information in, and I'm sure this would be a much richer experience for a LMS fully populated with lots of students and professors. But if I get my Read and Write toolbar open here, let's see some of the ways that I can interact with that text. So first of all, I can have that text read aloud to me. I can use either the play button, or what's really good for working online is the hover speech tool. So I can come down here and have this discussion post read aloud to me.
After reading Amelia Earhart, what do you think makes her a pioneer in her field? Do you think the author of the article would agree? Amelia Earhart, 1, PD.
So a few things that are happening here.
Managed discussion.
Turn off my hover speech. That's always an important part. So a few things that are happening here, I can hear the text read aloud to me. So if I'm someone that struggles with sort of the mechanics of reading on screen, I can hear that read aloud. And I also have that dual color highlighting that's going to help with comprehension. I can track along with the words as they're being read. Now, there are a lot of other sort of comprehension related tools on the Read and Write toolbar, such as the dictionary, picture dictionary, translator. So again, all things that can sort of support students with vocabulary and those sorts of things. So, I can click on a word, get a dictionary definition, and any of those can be read aloud as well.
Noun. Someone who helps to open up a new line of research or technology or art.
So that's a very fitting definition for this context. If I am an international student or I don't speak English as my first language, the translator feature can sort of help with spot checking particular vocabulary words that I might encounter that I'm not familiar with. So, again, if I highlight the word pioneer here, I have mine set to Spanish, and there are several other language options that can be used. And then if there is a Read and Write voice that matches up with that language, I'll also be able to hear it read aloud. So lots of sort of, reading and reading comprehension related supports here that will allow students to continue to be able to interact with the LMS content. Now thinking more about writing supports, obviously this is a discussion thread, so I want to be able to participate here. So I'm going to go to reply. And what I want to do here is I can either use the prediction feature. So if I'm someone that needs help with spelling, I'm able to use these right inside of that box here.
Amelia.
I can also hover over any of those words to hear them read aloud. And I can also use dictation. So hopefully this will agree with me. Sometimes it gives me a little trouble on these webinars. But I can go over to our talk and type feature. So I might say, Amelia Earhart was the first major female aviator. So I can use my dictation tool as well, and I can do things like add punctuation with voice commands, new line, period, comma, those sorts of things. So it really enhances that experience for students when they need to participate inside of their LMS. And the good thing again here is, for students that don't necessarily need these tools, they certainly don't need to open up the toolbar, but it's there for anyone who does need it, and they have kind of their own personalized experience here. So moving along, now I'm going to open up a different part of the LMS to show you a couple other things that I can do. So if my professor has, populated this area with different documents that I might need to review, maybe my professor adds in lecture notes for each day. Now, if this were a much larger amount of text, which it probably would be if it was filled with lecture notes, maybe I don't want to sit and read that entire amount of text, in one go. So the Audio Maker feature is a really helpful way for students to absorb larger amounts of text without needing to, sit in front of their screen and watch that dual color highlighting go through the entire thing. So all I need to do here is select any of that text that I want to read, and the Audio Maker will allow me to create an MP3 out of the text. So it kind of takes a second there to process it, and then you can see it's downloaded it onto my device. So now I have a sort of listenable version of that text that I can take with me. So, if I need to get outside because I've got cabin fever, I can just pop that onto my phone or iPad, whatever it may be, and bring that to listen, and I'm still, absorbing the content that I need to be absorbing. Let's move along here to look at some other ways that Read and Write can interact with other sort of content that's been added into an LMS. Now, this is an area where it can sometimes get a little bit tricky. Every LMS is different. Generally, Read and Write is going to be able to interact with a ton of the content that you might put in the LMS, but occasionally, certain LMSs, like let's take a look at this one, if a professor or teacher is uploading content into the LMS in the form of PDFs or other types of files, sometimes the default behavior of the LMS isn't exactly very agreeable with Read and Write. So if I want to access this PDF here, you'll notice that when I open it up in the LMS, it's opening in this kind of frame almost, and you'll see it doesn't quite look like a normal website. So when things like this happen, often the Read and Write toolbar is not able to interact with that content as is. But notice I have a few ways that I can easily work around that. So for one, I could download the PDF. If I download that and then, I could open it up with my Windows desktop version of Read and Write, or I could open it up back in the browser. So watch what happens when I do this. Now I have my Read and Write PDF reader installed here as well. And I have it set to automatically open any web PDFs. So if I go into my extension settings, there are a couple things here that have to do with Google Classroom, but this one on top is a really important setting, particularly for using LMSs. If I have this box checked, then any PDF that I encounter on the web is going to automatically open up in the Texthelp PDF reader. So notice, it's still loading, there we go. So notice when I was in that LMS, all I had to do was click to download the PDF, and it automatically has opened inside of the PDF reader. And now I have access to all of those Read and Write tools that I want to use that I wouldn't have had access to otherwise if I had just viewed this document in sort of that embedded frame within the LMS. So on that note, we'll take a look at some of the ways that the Texthelp PDF reader can support students, either through an LMS or however PDFs are being distributed. It's obviously a very commonly used file format because it's so easy to distribute. It's also a really easy way to get something on paper into a digital format, and especially now with can't be handing out lecture notes or handing out assignments, whatever it may be, in paper form. it's really easy to create a PDF and distribute that to students to kind of get the same effect, even though you're not physically together. And it also, PDFs are good for sort of preserving the content. So because it's sort of a stagnant image of that document, it's non-editable, so nobody can mess with the formatting, that sort of thing. So in the Read and Write PDF reader, I have a lot of those same support features that I showed earlier inside the LMS. So I have my built-in toolbar here rather than the little floating toolbar. So for one thing, I can hear the text read aloud. For the PDF reader specifically, we have a tool called Click to Speak. This works a little bit differently than what I showed you in the LMS. In the LMS, I was just hovering over the text to have it read aloud. With the PDF reader, the best feature to kind of give users the flexibility to bop around different parts of the text to read is this Click to Speak button. So all I have to do is click wherever I want to read in the document.
Science has released them from much of the age-old drudgery connected with the process of living.
And it'll go ahead and read that text for me. The benefit, especially of the Click to Speak feature, is, this PDF is pretty clean. There's not a lot of text that you might want to skip over reading, but a lot of times, with chapters from textbooks, for example, or articles where there are citations and things at the bottom, you may not necessarily want that document to read from start to finish. There might be captions or headings and things that students want to skip over. So the Click to Speak button gives that flexibility to really just click on wherever you want to read the text and kind of control the flow that way yourself as the user. Now, again, here, lots of different support features that I can access. Dictionary, picture dictionary, those things that I showed earlier. I'll highlight now the highlighters that I skipped over before. So the highlighters are a really powerful feature for students to do independent research. And especially, at a time when students might be kind of left on their own and have less of the supports that they would normally have if they're on campus. It's really important that they, still have that independence as a learner. So the highlighters can really be supportive with doing research and outlining for essays. So let's say I'm, reading this article and I'm going to be using it for a project or a research paper. If there's particular information in here that I want to take notes on, all I have to do is highlight it and give it a highlight color. If I'm, doing a paper where there's going to be sort of a main topic and subtopics, I can designate each color for a different topic, whatever sort of system works for me. I'm just going to go ahead for now and highlight a few things in here. Now watch what I can do. I have this Collect Highlights button. This is going to allow me to extract all of those highlights into a new Google document. So, and again, if I were a Microsoft user and I signed into Read and Write with my Microsoft account, this would collect to a Word document in my OneDrive. So either way, it's pulling out that information from the PDF and creating a new document for me with all those highlights. And it even gives me a link back to the PDF that I was working with, so that if I need to do a bibliography or works cited, I have kind of the bare bones of that and I can keep track of the sources that my information came from. Now, something specific about the PDF reader that doesn't really exist in other parts of Read and Write are some of the annotation tools. So, another really big part of reading is often annotating as you're reading. I remember when I was in college and, having to take notes on huge amounts of text, it was really helpful to underline things, make notes in the sides, the margins, all that sort of stuff exists here with the PDF reader as well. So for example, if I want to make some notes on my PDF, I can use the typewriter tool. So I just click wherever I want to place that and I can make an annotation. And notice here as well, even when I'm just typing a note in my PDF, I still have access to that word prediction feature and to the talk and type. So if I need those writing supports or I want to use them to save some time, I have access to those as well. And I can always, drag and reposition this anywhere on the page. I can make the text bigger or smaller. All of that customization is available. There's also some freehand drawing tools as well. So if I'm on a touch device, maybe I want to make a note of certain paragraphs, do some freehand draw scribbles here, whatever makes sense for me. Also some shapes tools, so I can do squares, circles, and underlines. So however I want to sort of mark up that PDF to help me with absorbing the information and pulling out what's important, all of those annotation tools are available. I also have a quick and easy way to save this to my Google Drive. Since this was a PDF that I accessed from my LMS specifically, I can save my own copy of it by just clicking on this Save to Google Drive button. And the good thing about the PDF reader as well is that it's collaborative. So if this wasn't necessarily an independent assignment that I'm doing, maybe this is for a group project, the PDF reader has commenting abilities in it as well. So if I wanted to make a comment, let's say maybe I'm doing a group project and we are going to review this article for information that we can pull into our slide deck. So if I want to make a comment to one of the other students that I'm working with, I can make a comment right here. Let's see. And I will make a grammatically correct comment. And now notice here, I also have the ability to do a voice note. So this is a really good one as well for collaborating, or also for communication back and forth between students and their teachers. I can make a voice note here, so this gives me the ability to just quickly record 1 minute, and then it will insert it. So if I just do a quick recording, assuming it wants to agree with me, which it doesn't seem to want to do. So I can make a quick recording there and then insert it as a comment. So just let me see what that looks like. And now if I had other people coming in to collaborate with me, they'd be able to see my comments. They'd be able to listen to them as well if I left a voice note. Oh, I was ignoring the microphone permission, that's why. It's been a long day. So the last thing that I want to talk a little bit about here is how to actually get your PDFs into this format so that your students can use Read and Write with them. So for this, I'm going to hop back into my slides here. So let's talk a little bit about PDFs. So if you have resources that you need to give your students in the form of a PDF, you might think, great, I can just make a quick photocopy with my scanner, or maybe I can just snap a picture with my phone and then send that over to the student and they'll be good to go. But not all PDFs are created equal, and those PDFs are not necessarily going to be in a format that will really be usable for students. So I want to talk about something called image-based PDFs. So if I were to just take a quick scan or take a picture of a PDF, it might look something like this. Now notice this is a pretty aged document here, but when I try to select some of the text on that PDF, I'm not able to. All I can really do is like drag a box or kind of highlight the entire image. So this PDF is not going to be something that's very friendly for Read and Write. Compare this now to a new version of the PDF that has been OCR'd, which is optical character recognition. Now here you can see that I can actually individually select parts of the text, whether it's words or entire paragraphs, and this type of PDF is going to be more user-friendly for students using Read and Write. So keep in mind here, the non-OCR'd image-based version of that PDF is not what you want to go for. Instead, you want to use a PDF that has been made readable and has undergone that optical character recognition process. Now, how can you do that if you don't have maybe a fancy scanner or you don't have access to some of the scanning resources that you might have if you were on campus? There are a few built-in ways within Read and Write that you can make that content accessible and readable. The first is on the desktop version of Read and Write, which is Read and Write for Windows or Mac. There is a scanning feature where you can OCR existing documents to make them accessible. And then there's also the screenshot reader, which is a really good sort of catch-all feature for students to kind of spot read inaccessible content. It's not necessarily going to be a great experience for reading an entire page, but it's a good sort of last resort for if there's inaccessible content that you're encountering. And just to quickly show you what that desktop scanning tool looks like, there's a few different ways that can be used. So if you have a physical scanner, you can actually connect it and then scan your page and do the OCR at the same time. Or what's potentially more common is if you already have a PDF file that's image-based, you can select it from within that scanning window, choose whether you want the output to be a PDF or a Word document, and then Read and Write will go ahead and create a new copy of that PDF that has been OCR'd. So it's really important to keep that, readability and accessibility in mind with the PDFs and other resources that you may be providing to students, especially, during distance learning when, they're kind of off on their own, using the support tools that they have access to. But that material that gets to them really needs to be in a format that's going to allow them to interact and get the supports that they need. So I think with that, I'm ready to pass things over to Louie. So let me make you the presenter here, Louie.
All right.
Oh, you just took it?
I think, did I take it?
Looks like it. Yeah, I can see your screen now.
Okay, give me 1 second. Okay, you can see the slide presentation there, Kathleen, introducing EquatIO?
Yep.
Perfect. All right, thanks, Kathleen. Kathleen always does a really great job. And the one thing that I want to make sure I point out too is the great thing about EquatIO, which is the product that I'm going to show you, and the product that Kathleen just demoed, is in a way they kind of talk with one another. So you can use the read-write toolbar in conjunction with EquatIO, and that way both toolbars can be accessed together, which is a really great thing, especially as students attempt to try and read and interpret, specific levels of math, especially as we get into higher education and how the math can become awfully complex. So I'm going to go into for approximately the next 22 minutes here. And like I said, Kathleen left me a perfect amount of time, and I think we'll have just enough time to maybe answer some questions. And I was looking at all these questions you guys have asked of Kathleen and our moderators here, and there's a lot of good stuff coming in. So feel free to leave some of those similar type questions in math and STEM if there's anything I don't cover. Just like Kathleen had introduced to you about the LMSs and how this is all geared toward the remote learning, I'm going to be taking you into how we can use EquatIO by Texthelp and making math and STEM digital in this remote learning environment for higher education. So with that being said, I am going to kind of, start off kind of where Kathleen started off, and let's talk about our EquatIO for LMS LTI integration. I want to point out something, and it's actually in kind of small print there, so I want to make sure I emphasize this. Approximately, I'd say about 3 or 4 weeks ago, actually, we only really worked in Chrome, and that was a pretty big hang-up, actually, for a lot of higher ed institutions. And I'm happy to inform everybody here on this call and anyone that watches this webinar later that we now support Firefox and Safari. So for users who don't use Chrome or don't really use the Google accounts, or might be on a Mac OS device, you now have full Safari and Firefox support if those are your browsers of choice. So that's all really good stuff to share with you. Talking about that integration with the learning management systems, I could sit, and obviously I'm a little bit biased here, I'll be honest with you, as the product manager for EquatIO. I will tell you that I absolutely love our equation editor here at Texthelp. I just think it's the best equation editor on the market. As a former Canvas trainer like I was, their equation editor just didn't do enough to be able to, for me to be able to make math digital in it. I found it to be somewhat complex. It contains some of those tabs that just aren't very user-friendly and don't contain a lot of the prediction items that our product has in it, which includes formulas and easy access to symbols and those sorts of things. So excited to show you those today and how we've taken our equation editor and placed it inside of these LMS systems. Again, more exciting news to share with you all today. This is always good when I can jump on and tell you all the new things we're working on. We only worked in Canvas up until about 3 to 4 weeks ago, and we are thrilled to announce to you today that we have now become partners with Brightspace D2L and Schoology. And as I spoke with Rachel earlier this week, I understand Schoology is primarily in the K-12 instances, but if you have siblings or relatives that use Schoology and you're excited about EquatIO, feel free to share the news that we do have a Schoology integration. I'm going to briefly talk about it, but I'm going to kind of show more into Canvas and Brightspace with you today. And then inside of our platform, we're going to talk about something called EquatIO for MathSpace. The bottom bullet point there, in case you are not one of the users of the LMS systems that I've previously described, actually, I'd say it's a little bit, closer to the midway stage as far as It's Learning. It's Learning is an LMS system that's fairly popular or becoming popular and catching up with some of the, the bigger companies out there. It's Learning integration is moving along fairly nicely. I would say more or less Moodle and Blackboard are kind of further back in terms of that integration and us pursuing that. There just hasn't been enough demand there for those two platforms. But I am pleased to tell you that if the demand does increase, Texthelp's a real big believer in listening to our customers. And if our customers are telling us, look, we really need this inside Blackboard and Moodle, we can make that happen. We just need, the tickets to somewhat come in or the interest to be told by us at Texthelp. We really, we love Moodle, we love Blackboard. We're not going anywhere with those LMSs, but we really would love your math editor in that product. And if the demand picks up, we will move our roadmap to meet that demand. So keep that in mind. It's really good stuff to share. As I mentioned, our EquatIO browser now supports Chrome, Firefox, and Safari. And just like Kathleen did, I mean, we spend so much time building slides, but I think it's more valuable for us to not spend time showing you slides and just kind of going right into a demo. And with that being said, I know these slides will probably be more than likely shared out with you. So I'm going to kind of go live here if you all don't mind. And I'm going to drag a browser window over. And as some of you probably heard me say, I used to work for Canvas and I've trained hundreds, if not a few thousand teachers on how to use Canvas. I love the LMS of Canvas, but as I've explored Schoology and D2L, there's things that I, maybe don't like so much about Canvas that I like about the other ones. Regardless, I'm just thrilled that we have our EquatIO math editor integrated into all of these platforms, which really gives the customer, you all, choice and how you want to make your math. So this is a demo course, so much like Kathleen took you into her Canvas demo course. I'm going to take you into a very basic demo course. And obviously, if we have Canvas users out there, you're familiar with modules and how you try and structure those modules for students and prospective students that are going to be taking your classes. And you can put in those prerequisites and line up these modules to maybe start with, let's say here we have a discussion, and here we have a Canvas page, here we have a Canvas assignment, and then maybe we push out a quiz. So let's go into some of the basics here about things that you can make. So inside of Canvas, of course, you have your global navigation to the left. You have your course navigation right here in this tab on the side. And anything that you do over here, of course, will be your modules and things that you make inside the product. So when I go into like a discussion post, notice how we have our standard Canvas text here. And then outside of the Canvas text, we have our math that was created with our product. So I like to just kind of show this from a creation standpoint or an instructional design standpoint and say, well, how did Louis make this discussion? So obviously as a Canvas user, you can go in and click the edit button as an instructor. You're given access to what Canvas refers to as their RCE, which is their rich content editor. And then typically if you have more than one LTI installed, a lot of those can be found here under this downward blue V, and I can access different LTIs. I'm not even sure how those got in there. And I also have the EquatIO one that's already built in and embedded in the bottom half of this RCE. So watch how easy it is for me to go in here and make more math. So I'm just going to enter, and page down a little bit. And when I load the LTI, I'm given an option here. I can use any of these input methods that are available to you as an EquatIO user. Now, if you're used to using EquatIO outside the LMS, which of course, that's where we kind of started with our product, you might have a few more buttons. But what's important to know here is within the LMS, our palette up here and all these buttons resemble what you're used to from a Microsoft Word experience or a Google Doc experience, as well as you have the typical input methods. And when I say typical, I want you to think of the 5 basics that really were the foundation of EquatIO when it first came off the ground and came out of development, if you will. And that is your standard equation editor, your LaTeX editor, your graph editor, your handwriting, and your speech. So when I go in here and I begin to make math, so to speak, I can just type in things that are common to me, like 3x squared minus 14y is equal to 8, and see how easy it was for me to type that. So how did I do that? Well, I used my prediction to build these algebraic expressions, if you will. So again, if I type in something like 4x, how do I make those superscripts within our product, or subscripts if you're doing like isotopes in chemistry class? So if I want to make superscripts, I think to myself 4x cubed. So watch, if I just type in CU, our prediction is going to pop up. Now you don't get this type of, user interface or this functionality within other math editors, which is why I, frequently will say, look, we have the best product out there. Show me another one that has these types of prediction and formulas already built into it. So then I type in something like minus. So I just typed in MIN and hit enter. And then I can do 2YSQ for squared, hit enter. And I don't even like, I'm kind of lazy with my fingers here, I guess you could say. I don't even like reaching for the equal sign. I just type EQ, because for me, it's a little bit quicker, and I tap enter, and I can just do something like this, and I can insert this math. Now, when this math is inserted, notice it goes in as an image. So I actually had a question from a customer today about accessibility, and they asked if a screen reading software can read the images inside of an LMS. So I actually loaded NVDA and I tested it, and it was able to read this math aloud. You also can use the EquatIO screenshot reader, which is up here in the top right corner, and I can drag and pull a box around this. So much like Kathleen and her product for Read and Write has that capture window where you can capture math, and that math can then be read aloud for students. So wasn't going to play that and read that aloud, but notice you can have this math all read aloud for you if you would like. The other things that are very popular inside of our product is if I go here and launch the LTI tool once again, let's say I'm doing something like the graphing. Notice it just said there, and it does it so fast, which is great. It says it's activating Desmos. So most of you are probably familiar with the ed tech company Desmos and the powerful graphing features that it contains. So I can do something like the sign of X, and notice that the sign of X will be here. It'll display in the graph for you. And look how easy it is to put a coordinate plane / graphing tool right inside of Canvas. So, I mean, it really just doesn't get any easier than that. I'm not, well, actually I do, because I trained on this for so long. To bring an image outside of Canvas into Canvas can take many, many clicks of a mouse or many, many clicks of a button. And if you want to get a coordinate plane into Canvas, it might take you many, many clicks. And you saw how quick and easy it was to bring a graph right inside of Canvas like that. You also can use the handwriting tool. So I can write different things here, like algebraic expressions again. And please don't make fun of my handwriting. It's difficult to write with a mouse, but that's a little sloppy. I'm sure you know students that might not have great handwriting too. But even though that's not, too awful, it was able to convert that into digital math. So again, I can insert that, and we can make multiple lines of math. I forgot to move my cursor there. That's okay though, you get the idea. Had I moved my cursor, that image would go down below the graph. Sometimes I forget to do that. So let's move my cursor now so I don't forget again. And then again, last thing here is I can speak the math. So just like Kathleen modeled for you, the speech to text and the read and write, this is actually listening for me to use math terminology. So I can click on the speech input and click on record. 4x squared minus 16y equals 12. I can click on pause, and I get 4x squared minus 16y equals 12, and I can insert that math. So we have the speech to math functionality, we have the graphing by Desmos, we have the handwriting tools. So all of these things built right inside of Canvas. Let me move to something else that might be of interest to you. So I'm going to jump right into another LMS. Took me some time to learn all these LMSs. They all kind of work a little bit different. I think the concepts are all still the same, but they do use different terminology. So if you're a Brightspace user, this literally has just been listed in the App Store as recently as probably close to 10 days ago. And I can go into my Texthelp course here, and I'm logged in here as a partner. So much like Kathleen mentioned about, we try and see the same types of platforms that you would see by being a Brightspace customer. It might slightly differ from what you see, but notice I have different options here. Brightspace, I did learn, they call their assignments Dropbox. That was slightly confusing for me, but I'm a quick learner. So if you want to make assignments, you go into what they refer to as their Dropbox. You can make quizzes. You can make discussions. I think Kathleen even mentioned discussions, and I talked about Canvas discussions. So this is all really, really good stuff here. So I can make and use any of these tools here. Let's go into a quiz, for example, and I'll show you this real quick. So as an EquatIO demo quiz, and I go and click on that quiz, notice as I start to build this as a teacher, I can go to add and edit questions, and then I'm given the choice inside of Brightspace to start adding questions to a quiz. I click on add, I go to new question, and then I'm given these types of question choices. I will tell you that I have clicked on every one of these. There's only two that EquatIO does not work on, and it is true and false and short answer. So it took me some time to learn that as well, but I went into multiple choice, and watch how easy it is to make a question using EquatIO inside of Brightspace. So I have solve for X. I'm going to space out just a little bit because I want my picture of math to come out here. I learned here they call this in Brightspace insert stuff. So instead of seeing the EquatIO logo, the insert stuff button inside of this LMS will load your LTIs. So I'm going to click on insert stuff. Just ignore all these LTIs. This is our staging platform and how we tested EquatIO in here. So ignore that it says EquatIO 2 also. Yours will probably just say EquatIO. And look again, just like I showed you in Canvas, I can use these input methods. The one highlight of Brightspace that I absolutely love is Canvas. I didn't show you, it does not allow this functionality, which is very disappointing. But notice how I can see the question here behind the LTI box. With Canvas, you cannot drag and move this box. But with Brightspace, I can move this around, which is extremely beneficial. Trust me, as a former Canvas person, used to be very frustrated because I couldn't see the math behind that box. So it can be somewhat challenging in Canvas to build your questions because of that limitation, but Brightspace allows you to grab this LTI box and make math right behind it. So, oops, let me redo this. You know what I'll do? Let's type in a formula. So I showed you the different types of, let me make sure, oh, these are checked off. That's why that didn't come on. So hang tight for me. There's my formula I was looking for. So notice if I want to do something like the correlation coefficient of sample, and I click on that, look how easy that is to make that formula that will be used in an upper level math class. And I can insert this right, and by the way, ignore the solve for X, right? So I forgot I even typed that in there as directions. It doesn't really matter. You kind of get the idea here. So look, I have a directions for students, and then I can access and input those formulas. Now you might think, hey, Louis, now how do you get EquatIO working in the multiple choice answers? So when I click here, when I click on answer choice A, if you will, I can click on insert stuff again, and then I can make more math. So this is how you would fill out a multiple choice type question. So here's the short side of this. In Brightspace, if you want to make math, you're going to look for the insert stuff button. That being said, let me move over to, and by the way, when I go back to my course here, I mentioned this earlier with Canvas. I'm going to mention it here once more. Remember how you had discussions, you have assignments, you have quizzes, you have self-assessments. Wherever you're building in Brightspace, look for that insert stuff button. If the button doesn't exist, that means Brightspace doesn't allow LTIs in that specific area. I told you all I would only mention this briefly because it's not really big in higher ed, but notice we have a Schoology integration here. When I go into courses and I access my course here, I notice I have an EquatIO demo discussion. I have a demo assignment and other items listed. So if I go in here inside of EquatIO for Schoology, notice that we have the Desmos graphs, we have all these items. Again, how did Louis make these questions with EquatIO? So just like it's different in Brightspace, remember it was insert stuff for Brightspace, but for Schoology, it's insert content. So right here is I can click on that and take a look. I can access EquatIO right there. So that's kind of is the furthest I'm going to take you in Schoology, because I know that's not really big in higher ed. That being said, let's jump to MathSpace. So I'm going to take you right into MathSpace here quickly. MathSpace is considered EquatIO's web app. And when I say web app, I want you to think to yourself that it's built on its own platform or its own website. Take a look up here in the Chrome browser. Notice I went to equatio.texthelp.com. So this is how students, professors, instructors, whatever. I just need you to go to equatio.texthelp.com. You're going to absolutely love the workflow here if you choose to use this. You're going to look at my screen and go, yeah, I see a lot of elementary stuff in here. It's funny because when EquatIO launched, everyone said this is for higher ed, this is for secondary, and I'm trying to show people that we have stuff in here for all levels, whether they be kindergarten, all the way through 12th grade in high school, including up through the college level. So this is called my EquatIO dashboard, and inside my dashboard, notice I have all these different thumbnails. These thumbnails obviously take time to build, right? Just like a Canvas module takes time to build. All these instructional design thumbnails can be shared with students. Students can complete all these thumbnails and they can be sent right back to the teacher or the instructor, and the instructor can provide immediate feedback and send it right back to the student. So I have time here for one quick example to kind of show you this workflow. I'm going to click on this thumbnail right here because it's not very elementary based. So we're going to look at some vertices and take a look at this question. The vertices of the triangle are A, B, C. Translate this using the vector 5, -1. So let's say I build this out as a college professor or a secondary level math instructor, for example, and I want to share this with my student and I want them to respond. They're going to respond using, take a look, all these 5 buttons that you saw in the LMS. In addition to, they can use any of these shapes. So they can use any of these things here. They can use any of the smart shapes. They can use a freehand drawing tool. So I can, write and just say hi to everybody. So whatever tool that they want to use inside of MathSpace is all here for them. And I, as a professor, I'm going to click on the share button. And here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to click share. I'm going to hit that drop down and I'm going to click this one. Why? Because I want students to respond to this. I want them to send me their answers. So watch what happens when I click this. I'm going to select continue. It's going to generate a unique URL that is only going to be available for that professor and those students. I'm then going to copy this. I'm then going to use, let me see if I still have one of these open. I do. How about a Canvas page, if you will? Or maybe I want to just build a URL in Canvas. However you want to share this with kids and students is how I want you to get this URL to them. So if you're a Brightspace user, a Canvas user, maybe you use Google Classroom, however you share information with students, send them this link. And when they open it, I'm going to demo this real quick. I'm going to change my Chrome profile here because I have to. And take a look. So as a college student, my college professor just shared that MathSpace with me. As a student, when I click on it, look what I get. And you might go, well, Louis, that looks the same as what the professor had. Here's the big difference. Right up here, remember, we had a share button as a college professor. As a college student, I need to send this back to my professor. So I only have the submit button. So the student is going to have access to all these tools to make this vector, okay, translate from 5, -1. And by the way, we do not have time for Louis to demo this for you. And I'm just going to actually put hi, and I'm going to send this back to my college professor. And look, it says to the student, thank you for sharing this back to your teacher. Click OK, and watch what I'm going to see as a professor. I'm going to go to my assignments tab. Remember, back to equatio.texthelp.com. The college professor can open up their assignments tab and click on it. And look what I got. I have a submission. I got one person here that sent this back to me and actually did the homework. And they did a horrible job, obviously, at the homework, right? They didn't even do it. They just told me hi. But look what I can do. I can click on this and I can provide immediate feedback and I can send this back to, look up here in this top right corner. I'm in the feedback loop here, this feedback window, and I can share this right back to the student. So I could come here and provide immediate feedback. Let's do that real quick. You did not follow directions from Mr. Shanafelt. And I'm going to click insert that in, and I'm going to put that right in the middle of the screen so the college student sees it, and I'm going to select send back to student. Now, on my end as the student, I would then be able to go back to my dashboard. Let me show you what this is going to look like. So equatio.texthelp.com. Now I've switched. I know I'm doing this fast because I'm running out of time, so I'm sorry. I'm going in as the student to my dashboard, and look what I have. I have a submitted assignments button. So the college student can go back to their submitted assignments, and I can go right here, and perfect, look at that showed up. It's immediate. And the college student's going to open that back up, and they're going to get feedback right there from the professor. You did not follow directions. The student then, would then be able to respond back to this and resubmit it back to the professor. So that's all really, really good stuff to be able to show that workflow. Remember, EquatIO is available across many platforms. It's available in Google and Google Docs, Sheets, Slides, Drawings. I didn't even have time to show you Google Forms, but we can go into Google Forms. So we also work in Drawings, we work in Microsoft Word, we work in all these LMS areas. So that's pretty much going to wrap it. Rachel, if you want to take back control and see if we have got 4 minutes left for questions. Sorry, I cut that a little bit close to 4.
Thanks, Louis. I think we're going to have Caitlin kind of send the questions our way. So Caitlin,
Gotcha.
do you want to hop in?
No problem. And while I get these questions organized here, Louis, would you mind resharing the slide deck?
Yeah, the slide deck that we used. Yep, let me put that back up for everybody.
Thanks
Sure.
very much.
Yeah.
So we had some great engagement throughout the session today, and I have a couple questions here for you guys. The first one is for you, Rachel, and there was a question asking for some suggestions on ways to share information about Read and Write and EquatIO with students and faculty.
Absolutely. So I've seen a couple of different methods for schools when they share information. I've seen some schools kind of build an email campaign, either to just stakeholders, one for faculty, and then for students on campus that are a series of emails with kind of bite-sized nuggets of, hey, there's this tool, we're going to be sending you some information over the next few days. And each day is maybe hitting on how it can support reading, how it can support writing. And then if it's EquatIO, this is EquatIO, this is the tool, this is what it looks like in the LMS. Some schools will build a page within their learning management systems that faculty can send students to look at and understand. Others will create websites under like a student support area or your online or distance learning page. Texthelp has a plethora of resources. So if you are a current customer, feel free to reach out to your sales director, like myself, my territory director, and I can provide you, or your person, whoever that is across the country, can provide you with resources. And that's something I've done a lot of lately, is creating documentation or sharing guides that you can share it with your students.
Super, thanks very much. And I have a question for Kathleen around the PDF reader. It was asked, if you make a comment on a PDF, do others have to have the PDF reader to also view the comment?
Yes, so you'll just need to open that PDF with the PDF reader, and you'll be able to see, any comments or annotations and things that other users have made on that same PDF.
Super, thanks, Kathleen. And I have a couple of EquatIO questions for you, Louis. And in order to use EquatIO for D2L or Canvas, do you have to download a separate version of the product to be able to access EquatIO?
No, great question, and I didn't speak to this, so I'm glad you asked. So when you think about EquatIO and how it works in the LMS, typically what happens is a domain or a higher ed institution would purchase EquatIO, and then what happens is, and actually Rachel might be better to answer this, but your territory sales director or your regional sales director would reach out to our home office, if you will, and we would be able to provide you with the consumer shared secret and the key in order to activate EquatIO throughout the LMS, throughout your domain. Now, also to keep in mind that the LTI integration is only available for domain users only. So if you're a single license or a group license, you're unable to give that type of access. So it would have to be the entire higher ed institution. And if you're a domain campus, then you would reach out to your territory sales director, and we can get you that key so you can immediately add that into your learning management system.
Great, thank you, Louis. And another question here, is the math represented in LaTeX within the image alt text? And a
Yep.
similar question as well, can screen readers such as JAWS read the inputted math?
Yeah, I saw that. So one thing that, let's see if I have a quick second to show this. So I didn't really get to speak to the accessibility piece of the product, but I can tell you that the alt text will be behind all EquatIO images. It's difficult for Texthelp to keep up with all the different varieties of hardware that students might have, which is why we always encourage that, pilot to kind of get started with it, to test out the student screen readers. JAWS should be able to read the alt text. Your NVDA software should be able to read that alt text. So if I make a math image right here, and I'm going to do it real quick because I know we're short on time, that was not good. Let me click back. So if I do 3x squared and I insert this, any EquatIO image that we make, you might have seen that little pop-up there. You can right-click on that image and access that alt text, and you'll see 3x squared there. So any math insert that you make will have the alt text behind it, providing that accessibility for students.
Thanks, Louis. I think that might be the last question that we have time for today, but if there's a question that came through that we didn't have a chance to address, we will be able to follow up with you after the webinar. And so just a note to cap off the session today, please be sure to check back at the webinar series landing page tomorrow to get access to the recording of this session. That is available at text.help/remote learning series. In addition, we'll be sending out an email early next week to recap the session and include some additional resources. And also, as mentioned, the webinar will be available with captioning at that time. And so lastly, I just want to send a huge thank you out to Rachel, Kathleen, and Louis for the presentation today. And thank you all very much for joining us. And we hope you have a great rest of your day. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.